The night shift. The neon sign flickered, casting an eerie glow over the empty street. Phillies, it read, a relic from a time when cigarettes were sold alongside coffee and pie. Inside Phillies Diner, the clock ticked past 2 a.m., each second echoing in the near-silent night. Joe wiped down the counter for the 100th time, his movements mechanical after years on the night shift. He glanced at the diner's only patrons, a couple seated close together, and a lone man hunched over his coffee at the counter's far end. The bell above the door chimed softly as a woman in a red dress entered, her heels clicking against the worn linoleum. Joe nodded a greeting, already reaching for a clean mug. "Coffee black," she said, sliding onto a stool. Her voice was husky, tinged with exhaustion or something darker. As Joe poured her coffee, he studied her reflection in the polished chrome of the coffee machine. She was beautiful, but there was a hardness to her features, a wariness in her eyes that spoke of difficult times. "Rough night?" Joe asked, more out of habit than curiosity. The woman's lips curled into a bitter smile. "You could say that." Joe knew better than to pry. In his work, you learn to read people, to know when they wanted to talk and when they needed silence. This one, he sensed, was carrying a weight she wasn't ready to share. At the other end of the counter, the lone man stirred. He'd been nursing the same cup of coffee for hours, occasionally scribbling in a worn notebook. Joe had pegged him as a writer, or maybe an insomniac philosopher, the kind who believed profound truths revealed themselves only in the small hours of the morning. The couple in the booth had moved a while ago. The man's arm was draped over the woman's shoulder, their heads close together as if sharing secrets. However, there was tension in their postures, a forced intimacy that made Joe wonder if they were at the beginning of something or the bitter end. Outside, a police car cruised by, its lights off but its presence felt. The woman in red stiffened almost imperceptibly, her knuckles whitening around her coffee mug. Joe pretended not to notice, busying himself with refilling the sugar shakers. The writer cleared his throat. "Another coffee, please," he said, his voice rough from disuse. As Joe poured, the man spoke again. "Do you ever wonder about their stories?" he asked, nodding towards the other patrons. Joe shrugged. "Not my place to wonder, friend. I just pour the coffee." The writer smiled, a knowing look in his tired eyes. "But you see it all, don't you? The late-night confessions, the clandestine meetings, the lonely soul seeking comfort in a warm cup and a familiar face." Joe said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. The bell chimed again, and a man in a rumpled suit stumbled in. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie askew. He made his way to the counter, nearly collapsing onto a stool. "What'll it be?" Joe asked, already knowing the answer. "Coffee," the man mumbled. "Strong as you can make it." As Joe set about brewing a fresh pot, he caught snippets of conversation from the booth. The woman's voice was low, urgent. "We can't keep doing this, Tommy. It's tearing me apart." The man, Tommy, sighed heavily. "I know, baby. I know. But what choice do we have?" Joe busied himself with the coffee, giving them the illusion of privacy. But he couldn't help noticing Tommy's quick glance towards the woman in red, or the almost imperceptible nod she gave in return. The writer was scribbling furiously now, his pen flying across the page. Joe wondered what story he was spinning from the scene before him. A tale of star-crossed lovers? A noir-ish crime drama? Or something more mundane but no less poignant, the quiet desperation of ordinary people caught in circumstances beyond their control? The woman in red checked her watch, then drained her coffee in one long swallow. She stood, smoothing her dress, and dropped a few bills on the counter. "Thanks," she murmured to Joe, not quite meeting his eyes. Tommy suddenly stood as she moved towards the door, startling his companion. "I need some air," he said brusquely, following the woman in red outside. Joe watched through the window as they conversed in low, urgent tones. Their body language was intimate, speaking of a shared history of secrets, lies, and things left unsaid. The remaining woman in the booth buried her face in her hands. The man in the rumpled suit stared blankly into his coffee, lost in his private misery. And the writer's pen never stopped moving, capturing it all. Joe sighed, feeling the weight of the night settling over him like a shroud. He'd seen 1,000 scenes like this play out over the years, 1,000 stories beginning or ending in the harsh fluorescent light of his diner. He'd seen 1,000 scenes like this play out over the years, 1,000 stories beginning or ending in the harsh fluorescent light of his diner. Yet, amidst the turmoil, there was a resilience in these characters, a determination to face their demons and seek solace in the night. The bell chimed once more as Tommy re-entered alone. The woman in red was nowhere to be seen. He slid back into the booth, wrapping his arm around his companion with a tenderness that seemed at odds with his earlier behavior. Joe turned away, giving them their moment. He caught the eye of the writer, who nodded slightly as if to say, "I saw it too." Outside, the first hints of dawn were lightening the sky. Soon the early risers would start trickling in, truckers, shift workers, and early morning joggers. The night's secrets would be swept away in the bustle of a new day. But for now, anything seemed possible in this liminal space between night and day. Hearts could be mended or broken, fortunes made or lost, and lives changed in the blink of an eye. Joe poured himself a coffee and settled in to watch the night's final act unfold. Tomorrow would bring new faces and new stories. But for now, he was content to be a silent witness to the small dramas before him, each a fragment of the larger story of human existence. The clock ticked on, counting down the moments until dawn. And Phillies Diner stood sentinel, a beacon of light in the darkest hours of the night, offering refuge to all who sought it.